The day ended. You moved through all of it. Meetings, messages, decisions, meals taken at the desk or on the way to the next thing. Tasks were completed. Responses were sent. The inputs were processed and the outputs were produced with reasonable efficiency. And you arrive at the evening. The particular quality of a day that is over, and something is off. Not bad, exactly. Not unsuccessful. The day was not a failure. But there is a specific feeling. A hollowness underneath what should, by the productivity metrics, have been a full day. The sense that you were present for all of it, and not quite present for any of it. That a functional version of you moved through the hours and handled what needed handling, while the part of you that would have actually inhabited the day was somewhere slightly behind it, watching from a mild distance. You were there, but you weren't quite there. And this has been happening long enough that it barely registers as unusual anymore. The days have a quality of motion without depth. The calendar is full. The output is real. The inner life is thin. Not empty. There are moments, there are pleasures, there is enough. But thin. Like the difference between a lake and a shallow pool. You can move through both, but only one has any depth beneath the surface. This episode is about that difference. Not about doing more with your time. Not about productivity, which has already been maximized in most cases. About what busyness actually provides and what it systematically cannot. And about the counterintuitive insight that has been available since Seneca wrote it down 2,000 years ago. The man who is always busy may be the furthest from his own life of anyone. Let me ask a question that is worth sitting with before the framework arrives. When did you last feel fully absorbed in something? Not distracted, not half present while monitoring the next task, not moving through something while already thinking about what comes after. Genuinely absorbed. Present in a way that made time disappear. Engaged at the level where the self, the self-conscious, monitoring, task-managing version of yourself, receded. And what was left was simply the activity and you, fully in it. If the honest answer requires significant thought, that is information. Because the experience just described, full absorption, genuine engagement, the dissolution of self-consciousness in the presence of meaningful challenge, is what the research identifies as the highest available state of human well-being. Not pleasure, not success, not recognition. The state of being completely inside what you are doing. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, the psychologist who spent 50 years studying this experience, called it flow. And his research on what produces it and what prevents it is directly relevant to the specific dissatisfaction the busy man feels. The dissatisfaction he often cannot name, because it does not look, from the outside, like dissatisfaction at all. It looks like a full life. It is not a full life. It is a busy one, and the difference is significant. Before examining what busyness cannot provide, it is worth being honest about what it does provide, because busyness is not nothing. It offers real things, which is why so many men organize their lives around it, and why it is so difficult to recognize its limits from the inside. Busyness provides stimulation, the constant movement between tasks, inputs, and activities means the nervous system is consistently engaged. There is always something new arriving. The alert is always on. The experience is rarely boring. And in a culture that has become increasingly uncomfortable with the absence of stimulation, this is a significant offering. Busyness provides the sensation of productivity. There is a feeling that accompanies the completion of tasks, the movement through a list, the generation of output. This feeling is not identical to genuine satisfaction, but it resembles it closely enough, especially in the moment, that distinguishing between them requires more stillness than busyness tends to allow. Busyness provides social legitimacy. The busy man is, in most professional and social contexts, valorized. Busyness is treated as evidence of importance, of high demand, of a life that is being well used. The question, "How are you?" is most often answered busy. And the answer carries an implicit social credit that unhurried or spacious would not. And busyness provides something more subtle: cover. The man who is always doing something is never required to examine what he would choose to do if he stopped. The activity fills the space where more searching questions might otherwise arise. The busyness is not only a mode of activity, it is also a mode of avoidance. Not necessarily conscious avoidance, simply the inadvertent effect of a life so full of inputs that the signal from the interior cannot be heard above the noise. Here is the counterintuitive observation that the episode opened with. The man who is never bored, who has successfully eliminated all gaps in his schedule, all quiet moments, all periods of unoccupied time, is often the most genuinely dissatisfied. Not the most unhappy, necessarily. Dissatisfied in a specific way. The way of a man who has eaten a great deal without tasting anything in particular. Who has been present everywhere without being genuinely anywhere. The elimination of boredom has a cost that is rarely acknowledged in a culture that treats boredom as a problem to be solved. Boredom is, among other things, the experience of a mind that is not being adequately challenged or engaged. And it produces, in the person who is willing to sit with it rather than immediately eliminate it, a natural direction, a pull towards something more interesting, a surfacing of desires and inclinations that the constant stimulation of busyness keeps below the threshold of awareness. The man who never allows boredom to arrive is also never receiving these signals. He does not know what he actually wants to do with his time, because the question has never had the space to answer itself. The busyness has preempted the question at every moment it might have surfaced. And what results, over time, is the specific emptiness of a man who has been constantly active and has never arrived anywhere that mattered. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi spent decades asking people when they were most happy, not what they thought would make them happy, but in what actual moments their experience of life was richest and most satisfying. The answer surprised him. It was not in leisure, not in rest, not in passive pleasures, however pleasant. The highest reported well-being occurred during moments of complete absorption in a meaningful, challenging activity. Moments when the person was operating at the edge of their capacity, when the challenge was high enough to require full engagement, and the skill was sufficient to meet the challenge, and the self temporarily disappeared into the activity. He called this state flow, and the characteristics of it are specific enough to distinguish from other kinds of positive experience. In flow, time distorts. Hours feel like minutes, or minutes like hours, depending on the depth of engagement. Self-consciousness is absent. The monitoring, comparing, evaluating version of the self recedes, and what remains is simply the activity. The sense of effort is present, but it does not feel like effort. It feels like expression, like the activity and the person are temporarily the same thing. And crucially for the question of busyness, flow cannot be produced by volume of activity. It cannot be manufactured by doing more things, or more different things, or staying busier. It requires the opposite. It requires focus, specific, sustained, depth-first engagement with a single activity that challenges the person appropriately. It requires time, enough time to move past the surface of an activity into the territory where genuine engagement is possible. And it requires the withdrawal of divided attention, the setting aside of the monitoring and task switching that busyness requires. The man who moves constantly between low-depth activities never enters flow. He may be stimulated throughout the day. He is never genuinely engaged. And the difference between stimulation and genuine engagement is, in terms of life satisfaction, not a small one. Csikszentmihalyi found that some of the people who reported the most flow were craftsmen, athletes, surgeons, musicians, people whose work required deep, sustained engagement with challenging material. Not people with the fullest calendars. People with the deepest investment in specific things. Seneca wrote De Brevitate Vitae, on the shortness of life, as a letter to his father-in-law, Paulinus, who was preoccupied with the administrative demands of his position, and who, Seneca observed with characteristic directness, was in danger of spending his life on everything except his life. The essay's opening is one of the most quoted passages in classical philosophy. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a great deal of it. And what follows is not a productivity argument. It is a philosophical diagnosis. Seneca looked at the men around him, men of consequence, men whose days were full by any measure, and he was not impressed, because he could see what they could not see from the inside, that a life spent in constant activity, in the management of externals, in the perpetual motion of a man who is always occupied, is not a long life made full. It is a short life, made shorter by being skimmed. He wrote about the man who spends his life in pursuit of recognition, the man absorbed in the management of estates, the man who is perpetually busy with other people's business. And he asked, with a directness that still carries force after 2,000 years, when do these men live? Not when do they work, not when do they achieve things. When do they actually inhabit their own existence? When do they sit inside their own life, rather than moving across its surface? His answer? They don't. Or they do so briefly, in moments stolen from the perpetual motion, insufficient to constitute a life genuinely lived. What Seneca was describing is not boredom or indolence. He was describing depth, the specific quality of engagement with one's own existence that busyness, by its nature, prevents. Not because the busy man is doing the wrong things, necessarily, but because the mode of engagement, shallow, constant, always moving to the next, ensures that nothing of depth is ever built. Life is long enough, Seneca insisted, but only if it is invested. in the specific sense of being genuinely committed, at depth, to what matters. Let me name what the cost actually is, in terms the busy man will recognize from the inside. The first cost is the loss of the deep satisfaction that only flow produces. The man who never enters the state of complete absorption is moving through a life without access to its richest register. He is eating, in the metaphor, but never tasting. The activities produce output, but they do not produce the specific fullness that only genuine engagement brings. The second cost is the erosion of self-knowledge. The man who is always busy and never still does not know what he actually wants. The desires and inclinations that genuine quiet would surface, the specific work, the specific relationships, the specific commitments that would actually matter to him, cannot be heard above the noise. He lives in response to the environment's demands, rather than from his own considered center. And over time, the considered center becomes harder to locate because it has not been consulted for so long. The third cost is the specific form of regret that Seneca describes. The man who skims through his own life arrives, eventually, at the recognition that he was always somewhere else, always ahead of where he was, always managing the next thing, and that the present, which was the only place the life was actually occurring, was consistently something he was moving through on the way to the next item. This is not a dramatic failure. It does not look bad from the outside. It looks like a productive man with a full life. It is a man who was busy throughout the entirety of his life and never quite caught up to it. The shift the episode is pointing toward is not a new productivity system. It is a different organizing principle for how time is approached. Not how much can I do, but what would I choose to go deeper into? These are different questions. The first produces breadth. The second produces depth. And depth, as both Csikszentmihalyi's research and Seneca's philosophy establish, is where genuine satisfaction actually lives. The practice begins with one honest question. If I stopped using busyness as a reason not to choose, what would I actually choose? Not what should I be doing? What would I actually choose if the absence of the next task, the next distraction, the next manageable input suddenly created space for the question to be asked and answered? The answer, in most cases, does not require a radical restructuring of the life. It is usually something already present, a kind of work, a relationship, a creative practice, a physical activity that is being engaged with at the surface level, and that has more depth available if the engagement were more deliberate. The shift is not from busy to empty. It is from shallow to deep, from the many tasks moved through quickly to the fewer things inhabited fully. One practical application. Choose one activity each day, one that will be engaged with at genuine depth, not monitored, not multitasked, not moved through on the way to the next item. Genuinely present, for enough time to move past the surface and into the territory where flow becomes possible. It does not need to be long. Csikszentmihalyi found that flow states can be entered in relatively brief periods, provided the conditions are right. Focus, appropriate challenge, the absence of competing demands. What the practice builds over time is a life that contains depth, not more activity, more genuine engagement with the activity that is chosen. And the specific quality of an evening at the end of a day that contained even one moment of genuine presence is different from the quality of an evening at the end of a day that was merely full. The first feels inhabited. The second feels skimmed. Seneca knew the difference. He wanted it for Paulinus. He wanted it for himself. He would want it for you. Come back to where we started. The day that ended. The hollowness underneath a productive evening. The functional version of yourself that handled everything, while the part that would have actually lived the day was somewhere slightly behind it. That gap is not a failure of effort. You were not lazy. You were not uncommitted. You were simply in the mode that the culture of busyness produces and rewards. Constant motion, shallow engagement, the perpetual management of inputs. What the mode cannot produce is depth. And depth is what the human experience is actually made of, in its richest and most satisfying form. Not more activity, more genuine contact with the activity chosen. Csikszentmihalyi documented this in 50 years of research. The highest available well-being is found not in leisure or in achievement, but in the specific state of complete absorption in a challenging, meaningful thing. The state that busyness, by its nature, prevents. Seneca named it without the research. Life is not short. It is wasted. Wasted specifically by the man who is always occupied and never present, who moves through his days efficiently and inhabits none of them fully. The question is simple. The answer, taken seriously, changes things. What would you choose to go deeper into if depth were the goal rather than volume? That question is the beginning of a different kind of day and a different kind of life. Here's the one thing worth carrying. A full day is not a full life. Depth is not produced by doing more. It is produced by going further into what you choose. The man who is always busy has not yet chosen. Choose one thing today. Go deeper into it than you usually go. Notice what that feels like at the end of the day. I'll see you in the next one.